In today's video, I'm going to talk about the Toronto Raptors, and ultimately, just like the title said, as why I think they're going to make the NBA playoffs this season in the 2021 and 2022 season. For those of you that consistently watch my channel, you know I'm a big Raptors fan, and as a diehard Raptors fan, it's definitely surprising that 21 videos that I've posted on this channel.
Someone get Bull in here.
Only one of them has been centered around the Raptors. And I posted that a few
Toronto winning 10 games in most, sorry.
Kind of the recent history of their franchise and why I was okay with them having kind of an off season last year, missing the play-in tournament because they kind
So,
of
like, I'm alive now, so hi.
to win the championship in
Okay,
2019.
hi.
Be sure
Hi,
to check that one out as
Jammerant,
well.
PP.
Today we're going to be
The
definitely
Raptors are going to be bad,
just
sorry.
like I said, I'm going to be talking today in depth why I think this team is
Y'all
legitimately
lost
good
as
enough
best player
to
in the
make the
series,
playoffs
sorry.
right now. The team has been
Dinos.
getting kind of a lot of hate and being underrated across the community. A lot of people have them not only missing the playoffs, but missing the play-in tournament this season. I've seen a lot of people across the NBA community have the Raptors finishing in the 11th, 12th, and sometimes even the 13th seed in the East this year. So in today's video, I'm going to try to prove you guys wrong and show you why I think the Raptors are going to make the playoffs this year. So let's get into it. So I got to start off by talking about the Raptors' defense, and eventually I'll talk about their offense as well. But it's all going to start on the defensive end of the floor for this team this season, and really how it has over the last couple of seasons. Ever since being coached by Nick Nurse, this team has really had a great defensive identity and really truly been one of, if not the best defensive teams over the course of kind of the last 3 years. In 2019, when they won the championship, in the regular season they had the 5th best defensive rating. In the playoffs, they had the 4th best defensive rating. In 2020, this was their best defensive year. In the regular season ranking, 2nd in the entire league in defensive rating, only behind the Milwaukee Bucks. And in the playoffs, having the #1 defensive rating. And last season was a bit of an off year, obviously, for this team for many different reasons. And they actually still had the 15th best defensive rating in the NBA, so around that average stage. And last year, they also struggled with a lot of things like rebounding. They had that huge stretch where they had a bunch of players out because of COVID protocols. And also, I think just a little bit, offenses were starting to catch on to kind of their defensive system and defensive identity. And for those of you that don't watch every single game of the Raptors, unlike myself, ever since they've been under Nick Nurse, they've really had this style that in 2019 and 2020, it worked really well, where they'll really shrink the floor and really focus on protecting the paint a lot. Wing defenders will help off of their shooters and really go in and double team guys when they're driving towards the rim. They're very good in rotations. They desperately leap out to contest threes when guys are open, and overall do a really good job of protecting the paint and the three-point line, and really like to live with the mid-range shot. Now, I think this style was catching up with them a little bit last season, as, like I said, teams were starting to catch on to it a little bit, throwing a little bit more pump fakes at them, moving the ball a little bit more. But I think this season the Raptors will get back to being a really good defensive team, because not only is their personnel amazing to the point where pretty much every single player on this team that's going to be getting minutes for them is an above-average defender, but I also see them playing a different style of defense this year as well. Remember back a couple of years ago when the Rockets bought into that small ball type of style? This actually worked pretty well for them defensively as well, and I really didn't think it would, but it's because they played this switchable style of defense. When really anything was happening, for example, the other team was running a pick and roll or moving the ball around or anything like that, the Rockets would switch because everyone on that team could pretty much defend anyone on the floor. They did have a little bit of struggles on the interior at times, but I really see the Raptors playing a style like this season because they have not exactly a huge rim protector. Their biggest player that's going to be getting consistent minutes for them is probably Chris Boucher, who's 6'10" and also is a little bit skinny, so he's undersized at the center position. And then you've also got a guy like Precious Achiuwa, who's probably going to be starting at center for them, I would assume so. And he's also undersized for a center. And also a guy like Khem Birch is kind of an undersized center. But these guys are definitely better rebounders than what the Raptors had last year. So I think that'll improve for them as well, which was one of their main struggles last season. And also, like I said, I think they can play this switchable type of style, because when you look at some of the guys on this team, many of these guys can legitimately defend 1 through 5 on the floor very effectively. A guy like OG Anunoby, who absolutely can clamp up 1 to 5 out there. A guy like Scotty Barnes, who's absolutely definitely versatile, can defend the perimeter and the interior, and a pretty good post defender. Pascal Siakam, who has already proven multiple times that he can also defend 1 through 5. Precious Achiuwa, who's very versatile and probably can also defend 1 through 5. And even some of their guards, a guy like Fred VanVleet, who's obviously a great perimeter defender, but he's actually a very good interior defender as well, despite his small size. A guy like Gary Trent Jr., who also can probably defend 1 through 4, and even a guy like Chris Boucher, who uses his length to his advantage a lot of the time and can defend the perimeter very effectively as well. And even Kem Birch, who also at times can defend 1 through 5. So I literally just named 8 guys who have the potential to guard anyone out there on the floor. And I think really when this team is playing defense, they'll be able to adapt and switch anything. And because they're playing under Nick Nurse, who's one of the best defensive coaches in the NBA, I think they will be able to succeed with any style that they do play, especially this one. And they've really proven over the last couple of years that they've built this culture and identity of being a really good defensive team and having this really good defensive coach, and I think especially if they buy into this style, it's going to work really well for them. And look at their personnel too. If this team is trying to if any teams are trying to score one-on-one against this Raptors team, you've got clamp guys like OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, all guys who are extremely good on-ball defenders and can go toe-to-toe up against some of the league's best offensive players and really have the ability to clamp up on the defensive end of the floor. So overall, the defensive coaching on this team, combined with the fact that I think they could be a very switchable defense and succeed with that style, I absolutely expect this team to be a top 5 defensive team in the NBA next season. And the fact that I do think this really leads me to believe that they're probably going to have enough, at least defensively, to absolutely be a playoff caliber team. Now, let's also talk about this team's offense, because there's no secret, I think all of us can agree, that this team will probably be a slightly
LeBron standing as usual. LeBron might be able to be MJ with one hand if he wants, because he actually MJ retired.
Really not having that go-to guy. I mean, you could count Pascal Siakam as that, but as we know, especially last season, he was not very good in the clutch. And if we're talking about offense only, I mean, you could make the case that this team doesn't even have
You're going to get clap again with a hashtag. Die, Corver, die.
Pascal, he's a top 40 player. You can make an argument that Fred VanVleet is a top 40 player. And I'm not going to get in depth into this, but my point is they don't really have that go-to guy offensively. But what they do have is certainly a lot of depth, which should definitely improve this offseason. Going on drafting Scottie Barnes in the NBA draft, which a lot of people are saying they should have selected Jalen Suggs, which at the time I definitely agree. But Scottie Barnes, I think, will fit well into this team as well. And what I've learned over the course of the last few years in the NBA is you can never draft or judge a draft pick until at least 2 or 3 years down the line to see how these players have proved themselves. Because obviously you never know how players in the draft are going to develop and what they're going to turn out like. And I do trust in Messiah, and I think that probably in the future this will end up looking like a good pick. And a guy like Scottie Barnes fits well into this offense because he's kind of that point forward that can be a secondary type of playmaker, and I think that's what this team needed. And he's going to improve over the years as well. He's definitely a great piece of their future. A guy like Malachi Flynn, I think he's going to improve this year as well. I expect big improvements for him. Last year they added Gary
if he wanted, he
Trent
could make the finals, but he likes to tell me Chris Paul. No homo. That kind of sucks, bruh.
Whether it's creating his own shots, scoring that way, being an off-ball player, shooting the ball,
LeBron lover,
clutch, all that kind of stuff. And they also
this is your stereotype LeBron stan page.
They got back for Lowry, who, like I said, I think will fit well defensively, but offensively he can provide a lot of rebounding, play in the post, and be that kind of traditional type of center. And overall, you can see how this team's depth definitely got a lot better. I mean, this team next season could definitely run an 11 or 12-man rotation. And I think that's really going to help them because they're going to have contributions off of their bench, especially offensively, really help them out. When we look at some players at certain aspects of the game, Pascal Siakam will probably have the ball in his hands the most and operate down low in the post. A guy like Fred VanVleet, who will mostly run the offense, and also Goran Dragic. Both of these guys are pretty good playmakers and passers. They have decent court vision, and both of them can shoot the ball as well. You have off-ball players that can shoot the three very effectively. A guy like Gary Trent Jr., OG
Gary Trent, that reminds me of Ben, and that makes me sad.
On over 6 attempts per game. You've also
Tribute
got a guy like Chris Boucher, who can also space the floor, knock down a lot of threes in the pick and pop. So you can see that definitely this team overall is not looking that bad as an offense. I mean, like I said, they don't have that superstar type of player, but they do have guys that can play down low and score in the post or near the rim. They have playmakers, they have shooters, they've got facilitators, And I think overall they have a lot of depth. And I think this team could surprise a lot of fans around the NBA community offensively. And I think they are going to have a top 20 offense next season. Overall, I think on both ends of the floor, this team also has a lot of potential going into the future as well. And like I said, for this season, I'm looking at a team that has a top 5 defense and a top 20 offense, which I think will definitely result in being a top 8 team in the Eastern Conference. I mean, we never know what will happen in the play-in tournament, but in my Eastern Conference standings predictions video, I had the Raptors at the 7th seed, and I'm definitely sticking by that. I think at the end of the play-in tournament and also at the end of the regular season, I think they're going to end up with this 7th seed, with just how good of a defensive team they're looking at, just how good their coaching is with Nick Nurse, and overall their team culture, and just how deep they are on both ends of the floor, and everything I talked about offensively too, and how they have a lot of guys that can do different things on the offensive end of the floor. So I really do think that this team is going to make the playoffs. And one more thing before I end off this video, we have to factor in too how last season the Raptors literally did not have any home games. I mean, it has to be so hard, not even playing in your own stadium. They obviously did have a home stadium down in Tampa, but not only were no fans there, but obviously this does not feel like home for them, because most of these players, it's not the stadium that they're used to playing in. They're going to come back home now. And also I have to mention too that last season, like I mentioned earlier in the video, they had that stretch of 8 or 9 games, I think it was, where there was a COVID outbreak in the team, and guys like Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, Norman Powell, and Nick Nurse even at times were out because of COVID and health and safety protocols. And now this is obviously not going to happen this season. At least I'm really hoping it doesn't. And with their home stadium, they're going to feel back at home again. It's really going to help out this team to have the energy off of their fans. And as you guys know, if you go watch my channel, I'm obviously a big stats guy. And in the last 4 years of their franchise of years that they have played at Scotiabank Arena, or the ACC as it was called back before then, the Raptors have had at least 5 more wins at home than they have on the road. And I think definitely this group of players that we have coming into next season is really going to thrive off of the energy in Scotiabank Arena. And I think they're really going to enjoy and feel comfortable playing there as well. So they're back on their home stadium.
Bro, in Miitopia, I made my Warcry cannon. Check the ends.
I think that this team is going to make the playoffs this season. So there you have it. That is the end of today's video. Those are my thoughts on my Toronto Raptors going into next season and why I think they're ultimately going to make the playoffs. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Be sure to leave your comments down below and your thoughts on what you think about the Raptors going into next season, and I'll see you all next video.